Well, thanks for sticking around. Now let's come through Nigeria's largest food company news. Nestle has announced its 2015 earnings, showing continued recovery on all the key items on the firm's profit and loss account. The fourth quarter sales and net profit were up 6% and 21% each on a year-on-year basis, while finance costs were trimmed down 80% to 562 million naira. According to management statements released today, sales were driven by 8% growth in the foods business segment. Nestle reports 29.3 billion naira as pre-tax profit, which investment firm FBN Quest says was, quote, broadly in line with consensus estimate of 28 billion naira, end of quote. The food giant is proposing a final dividend of 19 naira or 3% dividend yield and a total dividend of 29 naira per share. Let's stick with the country here. The International Organization of Securities Exchange Commission, or IOSCO, has re-elected the head of Nigeria's Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Munir Gwazo, as the chairman of the Africa and Middle East region. The announcement from IOSCO came late Tuesday, confirming Mr. Gwazo's re-election for a second time of 2 years. Mr. Gwazo will be leading the Africa and Middle East region of Securities Exchange's regulatory bodies on critical issues of cross-border supervision, oversight functions, rulemaking, and cooperation, among other issues. Nigeria's SEC has held the chairmanship of the IOSCO's Africa and Middle East region for nearly 10 years. Now let's talk to the Deputy Director and Head of International Relations at the SEC's headquarters in Abuja, Nigeria. Tunde Kamali is on the phone to us this afternoon. Kamali, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Bose. Good afternoon.
Yes, thank you. This position of the Africa and Middle East for IOSCO regional securities regulatory exchanges have been held by Nigeria for nearly 10 years.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. You're correct.
Yes. So what does this tell?
Oh, well, to start with, IOSCO is the International Organization of Securities Commission, while AMAC is a committee of IOSCO that comprises regulators from Africa and the Middle East. And our leadership for this long is a signpost of the growing influence and acceptance, respect, and regard for Nigeria and the Community of Nations. And so far, it's been so good. We have continued to lead, and the committee and IOSCO has continued to progress.
What precisely would this chairmanship continue to include moving forward at this very critical time for capital markets or for securities regulators within the African and Middle East region?
Yeah, what it will help us achieve, one is capacity building for our regulators. It will help us to attain best practice in regulatory policies, and ultimately it will assist us to build sound capital markets and robust regulatory frameworks within the region.
In particular, Mr. Gwazo, of course, his first election, which came in via the previous head of the SEC, now he has a 2-year, a second-term re-election. What do you think are the key issues Mr. Munir Gwazo, the head of the SEC, will be focusing on moving forward?
Okay, quickly, let me itemize a few of the achievements that he was able to make during the last tenure. And first, the issue of inclusiveness, and in that area, he was able to push for the adoption of Arabic language as an official language of IOSCO, which is the first time that we'll be having an additional language since the beginning of IOSCO in 1983. He also pushed for a lot of capacity building initiatives, and which includes the online toolkit, the regional hub in Africa, as well as the establishment of a West African Securities Regulators Association. And having been re-elected, I guess we'll be building on the foundation that we have put together so far. What we also look at other ways. Of improving the lot of AMAC, that's Africa and the Middle East, both locally and within the international community.
Okay, one of the issues has been non-interest finance, or what you call Islamic capital markets. Talk to us about this.
Well, the Islamic capital market, as it is today, is the fastest growing sector of capital markets all over the world. In the UK, in Malaysia, and even in Africa. In America today, the focus is how to develop what is called, in some jurisdictions, ethical capital markets. Because as it is, there's a lot of funds, idle funds, outside the formal sector, which are not coming in because the available investable sources do not meet the ethical standards of the owners of these funds. And it's an opportunity to bring this fund into the formal sector so it can be put to more productive use to develop economies around the world. And for us in Nigeria, we are pushing it, and we're educating and sensitizing the public on the need to come on board. And so far, we are succeeding very well.
Okay, let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much, Tunde Kamali, Deputy Director and Head International Relations at the Securities and Exchange Commission, talking to us on the phone from Abuja. Now let's move on to the world of private equity. Dubai-based Abraj Group, a leading private equity investor, has announced the formation of a dedicated project development unit to further extend its investment capabilities in the energy infrastructure space. The new Themis Group, now included as a member of the Abraj Group, will leverage Abraj local teams, global network, execution capabilities, and existing infrastructure team to originate, develop, and manage projects from concept stage to operations. Abraj aims to address the large power deficit in growth markets such as Africa, where a lack of well-structured, quality, and bankable projects is inhibiting economic development. Abraj's global strategy is aimed at capturing value throughout the life cycle of primarily renewable and energy-efficient projects across several subsectors and technologies. On the new Themis Group of Abraj is Naside Tas Amvaripor, the founding head of the Africa 50 initiative of the African Development Bank. Ms. Amvaripor brings in wealth of experience in growth energy infrastructure space in Africa. Back to Nigeria, where parts of the measures to fight the Boko Haram insurgency, the Nigerian government has shut down the cattle trade that sustained the city of Maiduguri in Borno's northeast, leaving many residents with no other means of livelihood. In recent months, the Nigerian army has taken back much of the territory lost to the insurgents during a 5-year insurgency.
Nigeria's northeastern city of Maiduguri has been battling to keep insurgents away, and in recent months, the army has taken back much of the territory lost to Boko Haram during a 5-year insurgency. But the war, which killed thousands of people, is still taking its toll in the region, despite President Muhammadu Buhari's vow to crush Boko Haram by the end of last year. Many residents now complain that security operations here are affecting their livelihoods. In the latest shock to residents, meat has become scarce as the army has closed cattle markets to stop Boko Haram from raising funds by selling livestock. The shutdown of the Maiduguri cattle market, one of the biggest in West Africa, has overnight made hundreds of cattle traders, herdsmen, butchers and laborers unemployed.
They collect from my own cow. Me and my brother, this Ala Yakuba Chama, 500 cow, my own 350 on farm 50. They collect even my own 350 cow. Everybody know for this place. Even the sector commandant, he pursued them, they enter bush, they run night, divide them.
The sprawling market had been one of the main employment opportunities for the more than 1 million displaced people who live in camps on the outskirts of the town after fleeing Boko Haram. The market closure has disrupted beef supplies in Maiduguri and the rest of Borno State, adding to the hardship of people who've long complained of poverty and neglect in the north. Hassan Kulubali is the field coordinator for Age Agency International Rescue Committee.
For sure, it's affecting the people because it's affecting everybody, you know. The way I said that the IDPs have been hosted by some people. If that is the place where people go and get their own 20 naira to come and feed people and they no longer have that one, it affects because one person is working maybe for 100 people. If you remove one of that person that is not working, it's not one person you should see, maybe, I don't know, 500,000 people who are not working, who are not getting something.
Officials say authorities plan to distribute food and find jobs for the city's youth. But options are limited due to a slump in vital oil revenues.
Well, let's talk about the business of transportation. Uber drivers around the world have faced threats and protests from regular taxi operators who say cheap fares from Uber drivers are driving them out of business. In Kenya, East Africa, regular cab drivers threatened to paralyze transport if the government did not drive the Uber taxi service from Nairobi, the capital. Now, some local taxi associations are looking into ways they can innovate to compete with Uber in the market they say they know much better.
25-year-old Ruth Kagiri signed up with ride-hailing company Uber in Nairobi just over a month ago to support herself as she pursued an acting career. With a return of about $400 a week, she was able to graduate from driving someone else's car to her own with a little investment from her dad. Kagiri says she gets more hails on weekends and at night. There are not many young female taxi drivers in Kenya. Kagiri says Uber gives her the opportunity to vet her customers.
I'm not afraid. Whatever happens, I need to work Friday nights, I need to work Saturday nights, and I do it the whole night till morning. Because I can't really afford to live in fear. This is my work for this season and I have to do it. I've not been faced by the security issue. I just try and be very vigilant. I really look at the client who I'm going to pick. I actually call my clients before moving to pick them, just to gauge the kind of person they are.
Uber drivers say the increasing threat of violence have forced them, in some cases, to hide their smartphones, which they use to map routes and charge customers. Regular cab drivers also threatened to paralyze transport if the government did not drive the Uber taxi service from Nairobi.
I think in terms of what does that mean for overall strategy across the continent, I think we will be doing a better job of engaging with taxi operators when we launch in a new market, showing them how the technology works. There are a huge number of taxi operators on the platform in South Africa, a growing number in Kenya, and a growing number in Nigeria. And part of our strategy when we launch in new markets will be that engagement up front with taxi operators.
Uber's experiment in Kenya to let riders pay fares with cash or via mobile money boosted growth in Nairobi, where about 100,000 people open the Uber app once a month. Gitao says his association is looking at ways of creating their own mobile platform.
What I normally pay my cab guy is around 700 to 800 bob, but on what I paid to Uber was actually 500 shillings. So I cut down my cost by 300 bob, and that's something good to me.
And I prefer using the normal and regular taxis because most of the times you're accustomed to them, and they're people we know, the guys we are familiar with. On the other hand, I don't really mind using Uber taxis because they're efficient and cheaper.
Born out of the frustration of two Silicon Valley entrepreneurs trying to catch a cab in Paris, Uber's services have mushroomed since being launched in 2010 and are offered in more than 300 cities worldwide.
Nigeria's debt market intraday analysis is next after the break.